the French had offered to move him from the men's to the officers. He had stayed in the shed where he was first put. In the burn and devastation of Moscow, Pierre experienced the most extreme limits of privation a man that can endure. But thanks to his physical strength and health, of which he had till the end been conscious, but thankfully, thanks especially to the fact that his privations came so gradually, and it was impossible to say that when they began, he endured the position not only lightly but joyfully. At the same time, he obtained his tranquility and the ease of mind that had formerly striven in the rain to reach. He had long sought in different ways that tranquility of mind, but the inner harmony which was so impressed feats of self-sacrifice or for Natasha. He had sought reasoning it at all the quest and experience filled him, and now, without thinking about it, we had found out the peace and inner harmony only through the honor of death and privation, and through he was recognized. The dreadful moments that he had lived in, the executions that were forever washed away in the imagination, memory, and agitating thoughts, and think of Russia or war or politics or Napoleon. It was his plan that all these...
Too close. We gotta back up. Else you're gonna ruin your eyesight. Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay, here, let me straighten out your chair for you.
Okay.
Too close. Is your eyesight bad? Is that why?
No, just easy.
Huh?
No, just easy.
Alright, I'll be back. I'm just gonna shred those papers, okay?
Yeah. He often remembered his conversation with Prince Andrew in quite differently. Prince Andrew thought that he had the happiness that only to be negative, but shade of bitterness and irony, as though he was really saying that all his desire for positive happiness is implanted as merely to torment us. Absence and suffering on the satisfaction of one needs the consequent freedom, and appreciate the enjoyment of eating when he wanted to eat, drinking when he wanted to drink, sleeping when he wanted to sleep, of the warmth he was cold, of taking a fellow man to wish to talk or hear human voice. 4 weeks had passed since. Let me do something. Alright. The French evacuation began on the night between the 6th and the 7th of October. Kitchens and chambers were dismantled. Carts loaded up with troops and baggage trains started. At the 7th of in the morning, a French convoy marching trim, wearing the enemy French talk and mingling with the curses sounded along the lines. Sheeted, everyone was ready, dressed, belted, shod, and only awaited the order to start. The sick soldier that paled in with the dark shadows around him. His eyes alone sat in his place barefoot and did not dress his eyes prominent from his of his face and gazed inquiringly to his comrades who were not paying attention to him. He yawned regularly and quietly. It was evidently not so much in his suffering that caused him to moan. His destiny, he feared grief at being left alone. Pierre, with a rope around his waist and wearing that had made for him shoes, some leather, and a French soldier that torn off a tea chest and brought to have his boots mended with him, went up and the men squatted down beside him. You know, they are not all going away. They have the hospital here, and you may know you are better off yourself than together, said Pierre. Oh, Lord, oh, it will be the death of me. The man in a louder voice, I'll go again directly, said Pierre, rising and going to the door of the shed. Just as Pierre reached the door, the corporal who had offered him a pipe the day before came up with 2 soldiers. The corporal and the soldiers were in the marching kit with camp sacks. I ain't gonna pee. Drink it. Alright. Our pond is here now. The French evacuation began on the night between the 6th and the 7th October. Kitchens and shed were dismounted, the carts were unloaded, and the troops started burning. Okay. Corporal, what will they do with the sick man? Pierre began, but even as he spoke, he began to doubt whether this was Corporal he knew or a stranger so unlike himself did Corporal seem at that moment. Moreover, just as Pierre speaking, a sharp rattle of drums and suddenly heard from both sides. Corporal frowned at Pierre's words and uttering like some meaningless oath and chained at the door. The shed was dark, and the sharp rattle of the drums on two sides were down. The sick man's growth. There it is again, said Pierre to himself, then voluntarily shuddered and defeating the noise of the drums recognized that the mysterious force that was compelling people against their will to kill their fellow men that was escape the force to their entry, or the extorkins. To those who served as not again good not again go to the sick man, nor turn back at him, but frowning and stood at the front of the door at the hut. When that door was opened, a lot of prisoners crowding against one, like a flock of sheep, squeezed into the exit, and Pierre pushed his way forward and approached that very captain who was the corporal and assured him that was ready, and appeared at the same time which Pierre had recognized in Corporal's words, and then the roll of the drums, pass on, pass on. He reiterated, frowning sternly and looking at the prisoners, and threw past him. Pierre went up and threw that the attempt would be a vain. What now? Asked the officer with a cold look, not recognizing Pierre. That's the right hit on his snout. Like we can't get champagne for this evening. Look, there. Why? That must be Napoleon's own. See the white horses and the monograms of which crown portable houses. That fellow dropped on his sack and did not see again. Fighting again, a woman with a baby in I was not till early in that evening. The officers commanding and the escort collected his men with the shouts and forced his way in among the baggage and the trains, and prisoners, heaped on all sides, emerged from the road, and they marched very quickly without testing, halted only when the sun began to set, and baggage carts drew up close together with the men to prepare for the night to rest. They all appeared angry and dissatisfied for a long time. Oaths, angry shouts, and fighting could be heard from all sides. A carriage that followed the escort and ran off of the cart and knocked a hole in with his pole. Several soldiers ran with the cart in different sides, some being the carriages on the horse and turning their heads, turning aside, and fought among themselves. Pierre saw that the German was badly wounded on the head by a sword. In a dust by autumn evening, and experienced one of the same feeling and unpleasant. Need to pee. Neither Pierre nor any of his others spoke to what they had seen in Moscow, or rough their treatment in French, or to stop. In order to shoot them, the position would all be particularly animated, and they spoke of personal amusing scenes and during the campaign, and the sun had set no longer the sun. Okay. Do yourself like all people.
Yeah.
Cool yourself like all the people did not sleep much at night. He often fell asleep unexpectedly in the daytime, but at night, laying on his bed without undressing, he generally remained awake thinking. So he lay now on his bed, supporting his large, heavy, scattered head on his plump head, and one eye opened, meditating and peering into the darkness. Since Bagration, who corresponded with the emperor and had more influence than anyone on the staff, he had begun to avoid him. Yusuf was more eased at the possibility of himself in the troops of Aajw